Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us again tonight. We'll get going. The number of participants seems to have steadied, and I wanted to be sure, especially tonight after we shared our letter last week, that everybody was able to join and log in and be with us on the Zoom call tonight. Before I get going, I just wanted to say a couple of words about the letter I sent out last week regarding the diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives that we're taking at the school. And while tonight's webinar is going to be focused on the reopening of school, I did want to note that we are going to continue to focus on those areas. I wanted to highlight in that news some initial steps that we are taking to help sustain the conversation of DEI. As I've had many conversations with faculty, staff, with alumni, with students, with parents, one of the things that I continue to talk about is my goal to sustain those conversations and to sustain them for years to come. So continue to look for news and updates on that as we progress in that work. But tonight I really want to focus on the opening of school after sending the letter last Thursday, which I realized was a little bit long, but 6 pages, a lot of good detailed information about our thoughts about reopening at a high level with some detail, but certainly we'll have even more detail as we continue on our work throughout the rest of the summer leading up into the school year. So we'll get right into it. As I've talked about before, and we look at our operations in our goal to reopen in the fall and bring the Penguins home. Our structure with our initial task force and our subgroups of business continuity, campus operations logistics, of course, the student experience, which we've added subgroups in athletics, we've added a subgroups in arts, we're looking at a committee on student arrival, communications, supplies, equipment, all of that regulatory guidance that we continue to look at, which I'll talk a little bit more about tonight. We started a subgroup on training. So all of that work continues to happen, and the groups are expanding as we speak. And eventually, as we approach the start of the school year, more and more folks will be involved within their specific areas to indeed bring the Penguins home in a safe manner and in a way that where we're allowed to open, where we're allowed to stay open, and primarily we're preserving the health and safety of our community, especially protecting those who are most vulnerable in our community, which is, those have been our goals, and I'll talk a little bit more about that tonight as well. Our guiding principles in all of this work, as I just spoke about, is that health and safety, is protecting our community, especially the most vulnerable. And we know that in any population, there are individuals with underlying conditions, no matter if they're students, faculty, staff, anybody who's on our community. So all that we're doing, all the mitigation practices, all the PPE, all the de-densification, everything really has that goal. That primary focus of health and safety. And as I've spoken about many times, looking at what the guidance is from those agencies that I just spoke about on the last slide, whether it's state, local, federal, CDC, is that we're meeting those expectations and exceeding them whenever possible. So health and safety really has been our primary focus, as I said, to protect our community, especially our most vulnerable. And then moving to the next one, to hopefully have face-to-face classes with a hybrid option that allows for international students to participate at a distance, maybe to start if they're can't come to campus due to travel bans or other reasons, maybe a health and safety reason, but certainly another guiding principle to allow flexibility in this work. And then again, protocols into place, operational changes into place to mitigate that spread on campus, ties into health and safety, but really dovetails into almost every single department on campus, comes back to really changing behavior, making sure that everyone's on the same page. We know that there are inconveniences. There are going to be inconveniences to preserve the health and safety, and we need to outline those in protocols to make sure everyone's on the same page and that we are aware of what it will look like to be on campus as a Cushing student at the beginning of the fall. And then hopefully that changes as maybe the public health situation improves. Massachusetts is still looking pretty good, but we're going to take that in slowly and bit by bit and really look at the data that we have and in consultation with our medical team make those decisions. But making sure there are protocols in place along the way so we can make those decisions within a framework that preserves the health and safety, allows those face-to-face classes with a hybrid option, and gives us flexibility in a whole wide range of areas, which I think is a real fourth underlying theme in all of this work. And it goes through, and I'll talk about the academic calendar for the year, when we roll out the daily schedule next week, when we talk about all of the different plans that we're making. Flexibility has to be key, because there is a lot of uncertainty as we move towards not only opening of school, but the months where we want to stay open, and what the state, federal, local public health situation, what those changes will have and what their impact will be on our campus. So flexibility had to be another guiding principle and priority as we progress through this work. As I usually do, I wanted to look at Massachusetts dashboard. This was for end of day yesterday. These are put up every day at 4 o'clock. So you can see that still progressing positively. Average test rate, 1.7%, which continues to drop, albeit slowly, but does continue to drop. 3-day average number of patients in hospitals continuing to drop, surge capacity up and down, but at a low level, and deaths continuing to drop as well. Actually, it looks like it's at the lowest number in quite some time. So very optimistic about that news, and we'll continue to keep an eye on that daily as we do this work, and also as we continue throughout the school year and as we open in the fall. One of the pieces that I was talking about on the last webinar was the Mass Department of Education guidance, and that was one of the pieces we were waiting for. And they had their initial draft communication on 6/25, which was the last time we did a webinar about 2.5 weeks ago. And they had an update with question and answers that was issued just a couple of days ago on July 10th. And really, some of the same things we're seeing from other plans. Facial coverings are mandated as for students and everyone on campus, faculty, staff, all employees, everyone who's here. Studies estimate 80% effectiveness in reducing transmission, so we certainly think that's our primary strategy for mitigating viral spread. Physical distancing, Massachusetts set out a minimum requirement of 3 feet, and certainly our goal is to exceed that wherever possible on campus. Hand washing, hand sanitizing, so that's been something we stressed even when the students were here in January and February, and that we will continue to do. And then, of course, staying home when sick. So Massachusetts will issue, or is scheduled to issue, their final guidelines sometime later this month. Of course, we will continue to keep our eyes on that and work to try to exceed those guidelines. But wanted to share that Mass Department of Education and that guidance is absolutely something we're looking at as we work on the task force and share it with our subgroups and all of the different departments that they lead. Additional guidance, of course, looking to guidance from the CDC, Massachusetts Department of Public Health, which informed the Department of Education's guidance. ASNE is the Association of Independent Schools of New England. TABS, the Association of Boarding Schools, the National Association of Independent Schools, our accrediting agency, which is the New England Association of Schools and Colleges, as I just spoke about, Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, which is DESE. If you ever hear me use that acronym, that's what that's referring to. And of course, AUX, who's working with us through this work, helping to manage this process, helping to project manage our task force and some of our subgroups. They're gathering guidance data for us as well, as we look at all of the information coming forward in order to create the best plan that we feel like we just rolled out the framework for, and that we'll build additional details around in the coming weeks. So the 4 primary announcements that we put out in the letter that I want to talk a little bit about tonight were academic year calendar, certainly a big one with dates, start, finish, and I'll talk a little bit about that more in detail and our thought process and what that means and some of the work that we still need to do as we refine that. Student arrival and repopulation of campus. Obviously, that's a critical time period when we have a mass group of people coming to campus, and how do we really make sure that goes well to, again, preserve the health and safety of our community, preserve those who are most vulnerable in our community, and also in a way that allows us to stay open so that while we're protecting, we don't have surges later on. Campus life, what life's going to look like on campus from a high-level format. And I'll talk a little bit about how you can get more information on that as the next few weeks progress. Daily expectations, for students when they're on campus, and of course, health and safety. And that was outlined in the letter, but I'll talk a little bit more about it tonight, and then answer questions in the usual format where you populate them in the chat, and I will answer those. And I also have some guests with us tonight that I'll bring in at the end of the PowerPoint presentation, and they can speak to answering some of those questions as well. So the academic year calendar, we're going to begin virtual registration next week on Monday, July 21st, and that's the date that all forms are due. And I cannot stress enough, in Magnus Health, please, please, please get those forms done. It really gives us the information we need, and we are really being diligent on trying to chase those forms. But if they're not submitted, your student will not be allowed to return to campus. And we really want that information ahead of time. We want to be able to know details about not only students' health, but there's a whole host of forms in Magnus Health that we need for many departments across campus that would allow us time. We are opening a little bit early, so it allows us time to get all of that information to the correct departments to build the best experience that we can for you this school year. So please, I can't say it enough times, that July 21st deadline. Please help us to get us the information we need, complete those forms. You'll begin hearing from us tomorrow. I know Magnus Health sends its own reminders, so sorry to be a pest on that, but we really do want to have 100% compliance on that July 21st form deadline. And similarly, July 21st is also our deadline for the forms that were linked to the letter, where you're going to be for quarantine and the address, and then also if you're choosing or asking to be online, if you're an international student, certainly with a travel restriction, putting that in the form, letting us know. And then domestic students, we expect you to be on campus, but if you're asking for an exception for a health-related reason or something else that we need to have an offline conversation for, either with our health team or with our admin team, that needs to be filled out as well, just so we can get an idea by the 21st of what that looks like, and then can have those individual conversations with families to make sure that we're meeting your needs and providing the best experience possible, whether it's going to be from a distance, at least at first, or in person. So that's a real critical date for us in order to move forward, and we really need everyone's compliance to get there. So if you could really put a reminder in your phone, put it on your calendar, whatever works for you, that July 21st date is critical. And then we've had some questions on quarantine, so I'll explain that a little bit, and then certainly if it comes up in the question and answer, I'll be happy to answer that as well. But we're asking all students to quarantine 14 days prior to arrival. So if you're arriving on the 20th or 21st, that's the 6th or the 7th, right before the 8th, we want you to begin that quarantine. So if you're a domestic student, we want you to quarantine with your family and only have contact with those around you. So I know we've had a lot of questions about, well, can I go on this trip or that trip, or can I had this planned or that planned. Unfortunately, again, we need to preserve the health and safety of our community and really need 100% compliance with this. It only works if all of us are on the same page and looking at what the primary goal here is, which is to make sure that we're taking care of each other and that we're mitigating viral spread, for those, especially those who are most vulnerable, but also to maintain the integrity of our community as a healthy one. So again, that's another big ask, I realize, but one that we need to make in order to bring the Penguins home on time. So I appreciate your compliance with that, and I also appreciate your flexibility and understanding. The overwhelming majority of folks who've gotten back to us, are understanding of that. And if you need to have additional conversations, I'd be happy to do so. But please know that quarantine is absolutely essential and critical as one of our first steps to mitigate viral spread on campus. The 20th and 21st, all students will arrive. They'll be tested on arrival and also tested before, which I'll talk about testing a little bit further as we progress, so I won't harp on that. But again, de-densifying the campus, trying to limit the number of visitors. We are talking about ways to have a positive parent experience. We know it's a day you want to share with your students. We're empathetic to that. We're working on different strategies to allow that. I was talking with the Student Experience Committee today. Also had a great conversation with our Parent Relations Office on ways to support parents, both at that moment and then forward, to really bring them into that experience as much as we can virtually after drop-off. So stay tuned for that. But again, a way to protect our campus from viral spread and make sure that we're maintaining a healthy community. That first day of class, August 24th, and last day of class for the fall semester, November 20th. And then we're going into a period called winterim, which we'll explain and communicate a little bit about. But I just wanted to, and I will a couple of times tonight, talk about the reasoning for that. And we really, as a group, talking with our epidemiologist and infectious disease physician, we have a medical director on our group, as well as Dr. Marshall, our medical director. And flu season seemed to be a time period that we all wanted to avoid. Anybody with symptoms would have to be isolated, quarantined, tested. We would need enormous surge capacity. And knowing that while it could happen that, the health situation improves and that's not a concern at that time, especially now looking at, different flare-ups in different areas of the country, that it's probably likely that at the time the fall semester ends, we're still going to have concerns about COVID and the need to isolate and test and make sure we're being diligent. And that's a very strong reality for that time period. So looking at the way to build in the absolute most flexibility is that we could have a winterim experience on campus. We could have a winterim experience off campus. We could have a winterim experience that involves maybe some international students need to stay. If athletics happen, maybe athletes need to stay. Maybe there are other groups that could be here for various times. It builds in the most flexibility for us. It gives us additional learning time to dig into subjects a little bit more deeply than we normally would. So we're really hopeful that that will give additional flexibility for the academic year if we need to shift things around, if the spring can back up or the fall needs to move, or the winter could be a third term and there are classes that are put into there. So there's all sorts of possibilities that could happen with that winterim time. But for now, we want to preserve it as a way to still maintain a fall and a spring semester and try not to have folks on campus if we don't need to, if the public health situation dictates that. And if not, then we're still able to have students here, and we may resume our traditional academic year schedule. But by starting a little bit early, ending at that Thanksgiving, and then preserving that flu season time for flexibility, we felt like in the end really gave us the best options as we move into the school year with a lot of unknown answers to questions we're all asking. So that was the thinking behind that, and we'll explain as the next few weeks roll on what specifically the winterim will entail. Student arrival and repopulation to campus. So as I said about quarantine, absolutely essential that everyone is quarantining 14 days before arrival. We're looking at all students completing a COVID-19 test prior to arrival on campus in the window of August 10th to the 15th. We're working with a number of organizations to do that. That could be you have to go to a local lab. That could be you have to go to a CVS. That could be we're going to mail you a test home kit. We're still looking at various possibilities for that, but we'll be communicating that soon as right now we're narrowing that down and making progress on what that pre-test will look like. Certainly students on arrival will be tested. Those tests have already been secured. We're working with a lab in the Boston area that'll come to campus and do that, collect the samples. We have professionals collecting the samples. We want people who are collecting those samples regularly, who are trained in that, who are specifically, have the job to do COVID tests. And it's not the first time that that's happening when those folks are here. So we're working with the lab to be able to do that. They're going to be on campus those 2 days. That will be a very scheduled process. Our student experience group will roll that out to our families to make sure that we're only having a few students in each dorm at each floor at a time to be able to still do physically distant and PPE equipped move-ins during that time, but we want to make sure that those 2 days everyone's tested when they enter to campus and then can move in and get settled for the fall semester. And then with that Monday, first day of class, as I spoke about on the academic year schedule, and then we're going to do a post-arrival test, and it's our third net that we're casting. All of these pieces really are all to mitigate viral spread, and these maybe are to catch asymptomatic positives that we don't catch by PPE, physical distancing, all the other waddling, which I'll talk about, all the other practices that we're doing. So we're using a lot of different strategies as preventative methods to maintain that healthy community. So campus life I shared, and since we've started this and since I've been doing the webinars in May, we spoke about this as a dimmer switch with different possibilities for how campus life will look like. And we're going to be starting in the orange mode of that dimmer switch, which you can see on the letter that I sent out has a link to a PDF with what that means, but pretty restrictive as we come in with, everybody comes in and there's no visits home, there's no visitors from the outside. And then hopefully as conditions improve, as the public health situations improve, we can relax that a little bit. So that's an important part of campus life. We know that, and Jen Viana will pop in at the end. Athletics is on the mind. Athletics are on the mind of many on the call tonight. A lot of questions about that. Our athletics subgroup is working on ways to have that experience be meaningful and be something that our students all can participate in and still get exercise, still get physical fitness in a way that's safe. So you can ask questions and we'll talk about that. We just started a group on the arts with a similar goal to make sure that we have artistic engagement, again, that's meaningful and that students come away with feeling like it was similar to or even equal to what they would have had during a normal semester. So that group is working hard, diving into that and looking at what they can offer safely and what that would look like in the fall. Of course, hybrid ready schedule. We knew that would be important for flexibility, not only given mandates from the state on how we want to operate, but also given the reality of travel and students coming to campus. And if they're able to get here through various travel bans and restrictions. So making sure that all students could have access to campus. We've ordered a live stream camera for every room and really have upped our game in terms of what students will have available to them for online learning in the fall, capitalizing on the success of our spring program. All of our teachers went through an online teaching program for an online teaching certificate through Duke University and are continuing to hone their craft as we approach the fall for that hybrid approach of in-person and online remote learning. And certainly dining is another area that we're thinking about, when I communicated in the letter talking about our areas of most risk, and that leads us into waddles, right? How we're going to group into cohorts, or we're calling waddles in this case by times that are most risky, and that's when we don't have facial coverings on. So it could be eating, it could be in the dorm, and everything that goes with being in the dorm, brushing your teeth, being in the restroom, taking a shower, whatever that means. And so creating family units of waddles so that when students are together during the times when they're not having that on, that it's only a limited group of people that are potentially exposed to each other. So another practice that we're doing and something that will be a reality of campus life in the fall. Daily expectations. So you'll see these signs around campus, reminders, please wear your facial coverings, reminders for physical distancing, washing hands often. Also, we're going to try to create some traffic patterns and movement mandates so that, maybe some hallways are one way, and so that we can create distancing in hallways or traffic flows on paths. Or again, we want to try to maintain that distance and protection at all times whenever possible. And whatever layer that we can build in of protection, we know that overall the integrity of the community is strengthened in terms of health and safety. So you'll see signage around campus, guidelines. We've put out a Penguin Promise, which we're asking everyone to read, and will shortly be shared as a form that we're going to ask all students and parents to sign. But it's really a pledge to follow all these guidelines. And as I said at the beginning, some of them are inconvenient. Some of them, will change the experience that you're having on campus as compared to when COVID wasn't here. There will be behaviors that you'll need to make to protect each other. And we really want to build this in as an area of school spirit where we do want to come together as one big waddle and promise to protect each other and be one big Cushing community. So please review that document if you haven't already, and know that we'll be sharing that shortly for signature, and happy to discuss if anyone would like to have conversation about it. Health and safety, we're looking at, as I said in the letter, a daily screening protocol with a series of questions and temperature checks that will allow everyone to be able to come to campus. Isolation and quarantine. Isolation is really taking any student who is is positive and symptomatic and making sure they're by themselves. We have very limited capacity on campus for that. So that was the reason that we're asking for that person to be available within a 24-hour period or to have a local guardian. Because if we do have a number of cases and we don't have a huge surge capacity, we want to make sure that students are able to get to a safe place off campus with supervision so that we have more capacity on campus for new cases to be able to communicate with families if other students need to leave. Hopefully, we don't need to have a large number, but again, putting those protocols into place to be prepared in case we do. Quarantine's a little bit different, but with a similar result. That could be presumptive positives. Those could be students who are asymptomatic positives. Those could be students who just need to be quarantined from the community. And again, we do have small capacity on campus for that interim period of 24, maybe 48 hours at the most, where a student needs to contact a family member or guardian to leave campus. But again, without a huge capacity, we want to make sure that we preserve the capacity on campus that we have and are able to work with families to get off campus. And I know there's been a lot of questions on that, and there are some professional guardian services available. There are some hotel options, and I'd be happy to have conversations with individual families about that, and I've already done so. And I'll talk a little bit about other ways that we can communicate and some structures that we've put into place to make sure we're having that two-way communication as we continue towards quarantine and ultimately arrival and the start of the fall semester. Contact tracing, another piece that we're thinking about and looking at, not just 20th century, if you will, contact tracing with interviews and good documentation and talking to students and looking at their waddle and where they live and who they're around in classes, but also exploring along with screening an app or a few apps, and going to settle on one soon to assist us with that process. There aren't perfect tools out there, but there are some that assist. And again, it's about building all the layers into place to minimize that risk and bring it down. So again, something that we're going to be giving more detail in the future, but please know that it's coming, and contact tracing is absolutely part of our strategy when we do have a positive to be able to limit that spread and try to find everyone that person was into contact with. And of course, preserving our essential services, making sure that medications and everything else that the health center, seeing bumps and bruises, colds, whatever it might be, are still operating and highly functional. So again, preserving that and making sure that we know that that's important as well as part of the health and safety focus of this project. So our goals for the school year, of course, as I've spoken about over and over again, and I can't harp enough, health and safety, that's behind all of our decisions as we approach the fall, and all of the different strategies for mitigation, protection, all really come back to health and safety being a primary focus. Going back to the academic year calendar, in a typical year, and it varies from year to year, there's about 30 to 32 weeks of instruction, and then you add a couple of weeks of final exams, right? One for each semester, roughly, at the end of that. So we wanted to maintain that. So with the current calendar, it's about a little over 27 weeks of instruction. And then in addition, there's those 9 weeks of winterim. So it's actually more instruction time, which builds in that flexibility for us to do a number of different things in the winterim, which I'm really excited about. And again, those could be on campus, off campus, a mix, a hybrid, really depending on what the public health situation is at the time. And as we looked at the academic year calendar, we knew that was something we couldn't predict. Back in March, we certainly couldn't predict where we are now, and I don't think now we would be able to, or at least I'm not comfortable predicting where we're going to be, come early December. So it's building in that maximum flexibility while still maintaining the period of instruction that we're shooting for. Of course, maximum on-campus time. We've heard from our families over and over again that the desire is really to have an on-campus experience. So that was the goal there, of trying to still have a high number of weeks on campus, similar to what we've had in the past. And I think we've achieved that and actually exceeded it in terms of instruction time. But at the same time, we wanted to stop the limit at least mass entrances and exits, right? If you think about a typical school year, everybody enters in August, and then maybe there's a long weekend in October. We have a mass exit there, mass entrance back in, mass exit at Thanksgiving, mass entrance back in, mass exit at the holidays, right? Back in the new year. So you kind of see there's 7 or 8 times when there are large groups of people coming and going to campus. And in the time of a global pandemic, really felt like we wanted to avoid that. So how do we do that while preserving all of the other goals above? And really felt like having that solid, boom right out of the gate, fall semester complete, and then preserving our options for the winter, but then also having a chunk in the spring that was very similar in time, sort of total weeks to the fall semester. We could get a good chunk in. It brought the school year out a little bit later, but also we're starting March 8th. So, if we're thinking about treatment, if we're thinking about, potentially a vaccine or anything else that might come, certainly the more time goes by, the higher chances are for all of those things, or at least our better understanding of how to mitigate viral spread. So felt like the decisions that we made for the academic year really hit all of these areas and gave us the best chance to have a successful school year on campus, certainly, but gave us the flexibility to shift to hybrid approach if necessary and needed, which leads us to that last bullet of flexibility, accessibility, and intentionality, right? We want to make sure it's accessible to everyone and it's flexible enough that we can give access to everyone, but really intentional and purposeful with our guiding principles and the goals that I've outlined above. And so that was really, when we set out on this and then continued to refine what this experience would look like, these were some of our goals for the year, combined with our guiding principles, gave us the result that we ended with, which I shared with last Thursday. And now we'll continue to refine that in all the different areas, whether it's student arrival, whether it's arts, whether it's athletics, the daily schedule. And that work is continuing to happen behind the scenes. And I'm thankful that I have a great team around me doing it. And we'll continue to do it until students arrive and we can welcome them to campus. So timeline, just your expectations, what we can look at going forward. Certainly we have the webinar tonight that I'm doing. Forms due, I really put that in here because that's a really critical piece for us to move forward. For every form that isn't submitted, it really slows us down in terms of making decisions for that next step, because then we'll need to know when those forms are due, okay, who's on campus, who can't travel to campus, who's on a hybrid, when do they expect to come to campus. We can really start to build in all the specifics from that point forward, but really need to know that information. So I can't stress it enough, make sure that form is in about where you're quarantining, and also what you're doing in terms of in-person, or if you're unable to travel to campus, your hybrid option. And then we'll certainly work with you to allow you to come to campus, right, at the time that immigration allows. So whether that's, October, a couple weeks into September, November, and we'll also work with you on quarantining and testing and all the other pieces needed to come to campus in order to preserve the health and safety of the entire community. So be sure those forms are done, and also Magnus Health forms are due the same day. So I know we're asking for a lot of forms to be completed, but all very necessary for us to continue planning past that point. July 23rd, we're going to have a 5th webinar with the Student Experience Group. So talking about on-campus life, and certainly I know our Student Experience Group, specifically our Academic and Student Affairs Office, rolled out office hours last week, and we had a number of parents participate in that. They're going to be continuing to do office hours. Those are every Tuesday. And so please look for reminders about that. You'll see those in your email. Those have been put out just before those office hours happen. So make sure you join us and participate there. And then we'll do another one on July 30th, webinar with the Student Experience Group as well. So lots of opportunities for communication, both in these, not only tonight, but also virtual orientation beginning on July 21st, and then these webinars on the 23rd and 30th. But also don't forget there are those office hours that academics and student affairs are doing on Tuesdays. I do a webinar for parents every Friday. Not a webinar, sorry, office hours for parents every Friday. So, in addition to these webinars that we're doing that are a little bit more formal, those times are really time for conversations, for meetings. We can have breakout rooms for personal conversation if you'd like. My office hours are every Friday morning from 7:15 a.m. to 8:30. So we're trying to catch, I know a little bit early for the East and West Coast, but we're trying to catch, international students as well. And certainly if you're a West Coast person and you want to talk, by all means, please email or call, and I'd be happy to have that individual conversation with you. So don't feel like you don't have access because of that. more than happy to accommodate your schedule and be reasonable on timing. And then, again, I've said this before, but opening is definitely not going to be an event. It's going to be a process. It's going to be a process that lasts throughout the school year, because it's not just about opening. It's about staying open and protecting and maintaining the health and safety of our community, especially those most vulnerable. So I thank you for your flexibility, for your patience, for your understanding, and especially for your partnership in this effort. It really means a lot. I'll take your questions now. Please put them in the chat. I see there's already a few in there. I'm going to ask Rajabala, Jennifer Viana, and Josh Doyon to join me to answer those. So you're not only hearing from me tonight, you're hearing from some members of our team. And certainly we will try to do our best to answer those questions. And if it's a question that we just don't have the answer to yet, we'll let you know that. And also, if it's something that you want to talk about offline, we can create opportunities for you to do so as well. Jen, Raja, Josh, anything you want to add before we begin taking questions?
Just a welcome to everyone. Thank you for participating tonight, and we'll do our best to share updates as to where things stand, following up Dr. Bertin's letter.
Thank you. All right, first question is about Magnus Health, and a question says, some forms of Magnus Health require a doctor to fill out and then require a doctor to fill out. Can it be printed and filled out and then scanned into a document because doctors can't fill it out electronically? Absolutely. If you want to even have a doctor sign, you could take a photo and upload it as a PDF or a JPEG. That would certainly work the same as a scan, but yes, it can be scanned and then uploaded. Next question. International student chooses to start the school year online for the first semester. Do they need to complete all health forms by July 21st? Good question. So what we're asking is, and for this individual, let's have some conversation about that, because if this is, oftentimes this is due to a travel ban or travel suspension, and if you're planning to come to campus at some point in the first semester, we'd like to have those health forms done as soon as possible. If we're anticipating a visa appointment that's late, or we know ahead of time because of a situation like that, your child is not able to come to campus for the first semester, then, obviously we can push that date back, as, health information may even change. So it'd probably be a good idea to do so. So let's work together and communicate on that along with our health office, and we can get you the information that we need specifically when we know you're coming to campus. So I hope that makes sense, but definitely let's talk offline if I can answer any more questions. Similar question on international students about the recent news from Immigration and Customs Enforcement about international students not being in status if they participate online. I'm happy to announce that the news reported this afternoon that order was rescinded by the Trump administration, and that we're going to resume the previous rules for students who are on an F1 visa. We haven't gotten the official word that the previous rules will come back into place, only that the order that was issued just a week ago has been rescinded. So stay tuned for that, but certainly good news for our international students, not to feel pressure that because of a travel ban, they can't come to campus, yet if they participate online, they won't remain in status. That's no longer the case. So we're excited about that and happy for our international families that pressure is no longer there. In terms of quarantine, how do we make sure that all of our students, and this is prior to school, I'm assuming that all students will quarantine. It's what we're asking you to agree to in the Penguin Promise. It's protecting the health and safety of our community. We can't stress it enough and say enough times that we really do ask everyone to keep contact within their immediate family members during this time. And then we're going to cast the nets for all of the tests prior to arrival, as well as at arrival, to check that. And we'll do our best when we get the information of where you're quarantined to be sure that that is happening. So again, it's a partnership, right? We can't police it to a high level, but we also know that the stakes are very high. It's health and safety of everyone in the Cushing community, and I can't stress enough on how important that is, and ask for everyone's partnership to do so. Next question. Is there flexibility on the arrival for international students? And I would say not a lot of flexibility. I mean, certainly if there's a case-by-case basis where there's an extenuating circumstance, but we really need everyone to be in quarantine in Massachusetts at the specific dates that we're asking, and then test pre-arrival and test on arrival. Again, that's to maintain the health and safety of our campus. Certainly, if you're dealing with a travel restriction situation, that does change. Of course, there's flexibility, and we want you to be able to come to campus as soon as you are able. And we will create the same arrival process with quarantine, pre-test, test, and we're already in conversation with local health resources to be able to do that. But if it's for other reasons, we really would like all of our students to arrive within the designated windows. A few questions on day students, and instead of going into that tonight, what I'm going to say is we know that this is a group that has a lot of specific questions, and we're going to create an opportunity for a conversation over Zoom similar to this, but because it's a smaller group, probably a meeting to talk about those specific questions that day students have. So we will be doing that in the very near future. We've spoken about that today with our student experience group and feel like that's something that we really want to talk about with those families to have them understand what we're asking and how the school year is going to look. Yes, students can start remotely. A few questions on that, but absolutely, there's a hybrid. Again, it's in that form that's attached to the letter. Please note in that form what your choice is for the year. Some questions on quarantine and isolation. If a student is positive, can they quarantine at home locally? Absolutely, and that's what we're asking, actually. We're asking that as soon as a student can leave campus, they do so that if we have to have additional space for more quarantine and isolation, that we have it. And that's the purpose for students having somebody within 24 hours to campus. That's the purpose for international students having a local guardian, is to really preserve that capacity for campus. Specific questions about online classes and learning support. Raja, would you say that would be something for the office hours on Tuesday morning?
Yes, absolutely. And even beyond those office hours, we are all available. Jen Willis, Dave Stone, and I, and are happy to have individual conversations as it would be helpful.
Great. And Josh, questions about activities, what weekends look like. I know the group, while they haven't come to refined concrete plans, certainly that's been part of the conversation.
Yes, it has. We've been really thinking about how to really maximize our space and what is hopefully going to be good weather. And so maybe much of what you're experiencing currently, to think about how we can start to continue our activities outside. I know our student experience group has been working hard to come up with some creative ideas. Also knowing that some of our opportunities may not just be going to the mall or may not be going to the movies, but to think about how we can just be a little bit more creative, and make sure that students are having an experience on campus that is going to be meaningful.
Great, thank you. Next question. Sorry, there's a few repeat questions in here, so I want to make sure that I question about food. Absolutely, the dining hall will be serving food. We're, as I said, looking at ways to de-densify the dining hall. We're looking at potentially using different spaces, perhaps tents, as Josh intimated, outdoor spaces when it's nice, to be sure that we're able to preserve 6 feet apart, different lunch periods. As we roll out the schedule, you'll see that, but certainly our dining team is working hard to have a really a good experience with food as students return. We know that's very important and has been a subject of a number of conversations that we know is central to students coming back to campus. Raj, a few questions about the SAT. Can you talk a little bit about that and the opportunity for testing on campus?
Sure. So as the College Board continues to update their plans and opportunities, we are committed to offering 2 SAT dates on campus, the September date and the October date, and we will facilitate that testing as a closed testing center, which means that students will not have to travel to and from campus. That's a Wednesday test date, and the College Counseling Office will be able to help families with any sort of re-registration process or any of those logistics involved. And we are actively looking to confirm ACT testing dates as well. So our goal is to make sure that students have opportunities for all the standardized testing that they'll need, and that they'll be able to do so in a familiar and comfortable and safe testing environment that will, again, protect those larger ideals that Randy spoke about.
Thank you. Some questions about the delay of physicals around when the due date is. I would say, this person said their physical was a few days before forms were due, but the doctor may get it the day after. Certainly, just stay in communication with us. I mean, that's certainly understandable, and we know that it's a short time window to get all those forms done, and appreciate the due diligence on your part to do them. So I would say just let us know that that's coming, and if all the other forms are complete and that one is a couple of days late, and we know that it's going to be late, that's acceptable. Will Cushing send a lab order to get tested? I'm assuming this is for the pre-arrival test. We're working on that. Or the other option in this question is, or do you just go do it within the time that you ask? We're really looking for the best option, working with our physicians we have 3 physicians on the Bring the Penguins Home Task Force, as well as an epidemiologist. And so we've spoken with Quest, we've spoken with LabCorp, we've spoken with independent labs, and are really pursuing the best option for A, the most reliable test, B, the most convenient for you, and C, the one that gets us the results the quickest. So sometimes hitting all of those 3 is a little bit difficult, but certainly expect to do that. I would say probably in the next 7 to 10 days. We have some good options, need to have additional conversations, but we'll get that to you as soon as we can. Jen, some questions about athletics, physical activities. Can we maintain social distance? I know you don't have all the answers to these, but just give us an idea of the work that your subgroup has been doing.
Sure. So no word yet on whether we'll continue as competitive, although we're certainly prepared and hope that, best case scenario that we do. However, the working group is coming up with a schedule that's going to allow our fall athletes to participate in their sports if we're non-competitive, whether it's small pods, skill building, training, that sort of thing. And with the NEPSAC loosening the rule for the out-of-season sports to work with their coaches if we're non-competitive, we are working into the schedule opportunities for our multi-sport athletes to be able to do their fall sport, and then they might do their winter sport and alternate with their spring sport. So we're really being really thoughtful and intentional about that schedule, but we really want to support our athletes to be able to participate in the sports that they enjoy. What was the second question? About social distancing?
Right, physical distancing during.
Yes. Yeah. So we think that when we open, it's certainly going to be more restricted. We're actively researching masks right now that are conducive to exercising and being able to breathe a little bit better. So we'll be able to share that information as well, but we would likely start in a more restricted way and as we move along and can properly socially distance, perhaps removing our masks under guidance of our doctors and medical staff.
Great, thank you. A few questions here about international students and domestic students, transportation from the airport, and One piece of information that we're waiting on is after that July 21st date, when we know who's going to be on campus, who's going to be online, we will roll out a process for that transportation. We're actually pursuing a couple of different avenues in terms of, because we know we're going to need additional capacity. We can't have the same number of people per vehicle that we normally would, and additional PPE requirements. And there's also a couple of third-party companies that provide this type of service, particularly for schools and universities that we're in conversation with. So look for more news about that. And also, once that July 21st date passes, then we can start to assign when students and families will arrive to campus, either August 20th or 21st, once we have the ideas of those numbers, and can start to assign dorm rooms. Josh, anything else to add to that?
No, exactly right. We are just still working with some outside organizations and thinking about our best practices around this, to make sure that we can just make sure that our plan is meeting physical distancing and not putting people into a vehicle, you know, who do not need to be sharing a vehicle at the same time. So once we have a better idea of our transportation needs from our families, you know, we will be reaching out to arrange those, and to also start scheduling the return to campus, which will be later in August.
Great. Raj, a question: will there be any negative impact on a student's school record or transcript, or when proceeding with online classes?
No, absolutely not. Obviously, the nature of a pandemic means that every school is dealing with this in some form or another. Colleges continue. There's a question I was actually just responding to in the chat that I'll answer here as well. The majority of colleges and universities have already altered their expectations and have become test optional. So that's another accommodation that they have made. Certainly the college board will have to reassess and be flexible about expectations, depending on what the landscape looks like in the spring, as they did last spring in terms of being able to conduct AP tests. And our plan is to issue grades and credits as we did in the spring, and to be consistent there. So on paper, a transcript will look identical to the ways that it has done in the past, but as each school across the country makes decisions about what's best for them, again, colleges are going to be very understanding about the variety of information that they are receiving from individual schools.
Great. Appreciate that. Thank you. All right, a couple of VP questions. Student arrival, international students, we answered that. Books, Raj, another question for students who are studying remotely in terms of books and availability.
Yep, as again, this is another place where we are going to be completely consistent. Cushing will provide books for all students. For those that are not able to be on campus for the distribution immediately, we will provide PDFs and electronic copies as well. And a number of classes have switched to electronic textbooks from the outset, just to help with the convenience factor, and to be able to tap into the growing resources that are available electronically and otherwise. So that part should be very seamless.
Great, thank you. SAT question. I think this question is, to whom should we communicate about physical issues? I think what that refers to is getting a physical exam prior to school. You can certainly communicate that with Colleen Fay, cfay@cushing.org. She's handling this processing of all of our forms right now, and she can get back to you with any information you need or answer any questions you may have. Are we still planning on having roommates? Josh, you want to take that one?
As of today, yes. But that is also why Dr. Bertin spoke earlier about the push and just about the importance of really completing those forms by July 21st. Because once we have a better idea of families' plans and their ability to join us in the fall, then we will start to be able to think about our waddle sizes, think about what a boarding experience will look like, and also to really be able to answer that question a little bit better, just about will students have roommates or not.
Great. Josh, another one for you from a new student who says they're curious as to what opportunities will be available to make new friends because we're all 6 feet apart.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's a great question. I think it's a really good question. While we all are 6 feet apart, there will be many opportunities throughout the year. Some of what we're going to be seeing over the next 4 weeks as we lead up to the start of school is that we're all talking about the differences that are going to exist here at Cushing, but we're still going to be maintaining classes. We're still going to be maintaining our advisory groups. We're still going to be maintaining waddles. That's part of our thinking with that idea of waddles, is to already kind of build in students who may have like interests, who may have similar grades, who you may be in similar classes with, that you can be a little bit more relaxed with as well. And also too, Dr. Bertin spoke a little bit about our virtual orientation that's going to start next week. That's going to start next Tuesday night at 7 o'clock. We're really trying to maintain that 7 o'clock time, as it really seems to capture the various time zones that we are working with here. And it's our goal for our new students to have at least, if they are able to, 8 different sessions over the course of the year, over the course of the next 4 weeks on a Tuesday and a Thursday night, to really start to meet some of our student leaders, and also start to meet some others on campus to kind of get a sense of, what my Cushing looks like, what some of the expectations in the dorm may be, or just kind of what campus will look like once we are able to get it kind of marked up in terms of signage and in terms of some other key markers that we're going to have for the fall.
Yeah, great. Only a couple more left, and we tried to keep it to an hour. Certainly, all of us have, as I said, office hours. Mine are on Friday. I think I said Monday, but my parent office hours are Friday. As some of you, we had 32 in the group last week, and certainly welcome you to join again or have new parents participate on Friday. The Monday office hours I do are for faculty and staff. So sorry to get that confused, but we will send a reminder for the parent office hours on this Friday. And Josh and Raja, your office hours are Tuesday, correct? Just to repeat.
Yep, Tuesday from 8 to 9:30.
And that will be sent as a reminder as well. I think I see some repeat questions and then others, some comments. So we do have a log of your questions. If we didn't answer those, we will get back to you. Oh, one last one about testing. Testing cost is a responsibility of the family. We will help you to work with your insurance company to help you with the reimbursement process. And we're hearing different results from different insurance companies. But are trying to help in the best way possible in that process, and want to keep it to 3 tests, and then only after that, unless a student is exposed or sick. So I wanted to clarify that. And then last one, I won't keep everybody too long, but we'll answer these. Leaving campus. So certainly for the first few weeks, whether it's for a commitment at home or a medical appointment or anything else, we're not allowing, it's that mass entry exit, right? Those comings and goings from campus, at least as we start school for the near future from that point forward. Again, happy to have conversation to explain why, but that's how we're going to start the year. I will let everyone go for the evening. Again, there will be a recording of this on our website, as they were with the last few webinars. Please feel free to join our office hours. Please feel free to contact any of us via email to set up individual conversation times. And thank you for your participation. Thank you to our panelists. And I hope everyone has a happy and healthy evening. Thanks all.